Entrepreneurs, we have a treat for you today. Our cyber-focused guest is Mark Long, president of Long Performance Advisors and faculty member at the Kelley School of Business. Mark has extensive experience in formation of startup companies, and he has served as an advisor on business incubator designs all over the world. Mark, welcome. Thank you so much for coming in
Thank
today.
you.
Appreciate your time. Well, just to help us understand your background a little bit better and what you're up to these days, can you give me your elevator pitch?
Certainly. I've spent quite a bit of time working in the incubation field, as you said, all over the world, and a lot of municipalities, universities, even countries want to build incubators these days. Economic development is on everybody's mind, and incubators play a big role in that, particularly in bringing up entrepreneurs and small businesses to maturity. My job is to go in and make sure that these places need an incubator, and I do a lot of feasibility studies to find out if an incubator is really feasible and proper in that setting. I go in and catalog local businesses to see if they're in support of the incubator, and also find out if there is an entrepreneurial culture, if people are ready to start businesses, put them in the incubator, and build local businesses, local startups, and get going and build new jobs in that area so that an incubator is really warranted in that situation. Mm-hmm. So I provide advice on design, I provide advice on programs, I provide advice on building mentor networks, angel networks, financing, anything it takes to put an incubator together in its totality.
When you say incubator, I have a general idea of what that is, but can you give us the parameters? What exactly does a business incubator look like? What are the specifics that we should know?
That's a great question, because a lot of people feel like an incubator is just a building, and it's far from that. In fact, in the old days, a lot of people just put up a building, put an incubator sign on it.
And that was an incubator.
That was an incubator. An incubator is really the programs and services provided. In fact, today some people do what's called virtual incubation and don't even have a building. They just provide program services and advice.
Okay, give me some examples of these programs and services.
An example would really be providing entrepreneurial education, much as we do here at Kelley, providing advisement and mentorship, assigning entrepreneurs someone who is experienced, who's built companies before, who understands the pitfalls and the legal problems and the overall scheme of starting a company from start to finish. Building a network as well as a task of an incubator to build up advisors, people who can provide financing, such as angel networks and everything, people who can provide the building blocks for giving any kind of advice that it takes to get a company through those initial stages and over the hump of growing from 2 people to 200 people.
You had mentioned that you look at the feasibility of an incubator, whether an incubator is needed. What are some of your indicators that it's needed?
I think number one thing is looking at the inflow of businesses. The crucial thing to anybody is supply and demand. If you go to an area and there are very few entrepreneurs and there's very few people willing to take the risk and to take it upon themselves to grow a business, you have to really question whether an incubator is going to have the traffic that it needs. That's the key thing.
You'd mentioned also that you look for an entrepreneurial culture. What are those indicators? What does that look like?
It looks like a risk-taking culture. Many people in the Midwest were afraid 25 years ago that the Midwest was a risk-averse culture, and incubators weren't the right thing for it. But as time went by, more and more people seemed willing to take those risks and to start their own company for 3 primary reasons. They wanted to be their own boss. They wanted the independence. Number 2, they wanted to make unlimited funds. They were tired of sitting in a cubicle making $25,000 to $45,000 a year. And number 3, they liked the idea of being able to hire their family, friends, relatives, and establish a legacy for their children, perhaps, by having their own company.
So those are some entrepreneurial traits and an example of how you decide whether Midwest is good or not. That's the Midwest, and that's a good old Indiana example. What about incubators more internationally? What are some of the things we should talk about?
That's almost carried over globally, is that people,
Those traits.
indeed, the same traits. They want to establish a legacy for their children and for their families. They want a better living, a better standard of living, and they want to make more money. And indeed, I think they're tired of the same old, same old. Even when you go to China, which I've been there, to Malaysia, to Russia, to some other countries that you typically wouldn't consider to be either democratic or entrepreneurial, more and more you see people there wanting to start their own businesses with some great ideas. They just need the network and the support, a la an incubator, to set up shop, have a place to go, and to get some advisement, mentorship, and those programs that I told you about to get going.
Where do you say incubators really on the rise right now?
Actually, it is some of those countries. Russia is building a vast incubator network. They've just started an incubator association there. Malaysia has a tremendous incubator network. The country of Malaysia itself, the entire country, is trying to convert their economy from being a software-based economy to more of a biotech economy. And as a result, have built incubators specifically gauged toward biotechnology. So incubators can be specific as well. There are kitchen incubators. There are biotechnology incubators. Absolutely. Incubators directed toward food service businesses.
Oh, okay.
People that want to start a food service business but don't have access to large ovens, large food storage, things like that. There are retail incubators for retail businesses, people that might want to start a clothing shop. There are textile incubators. All kinds of different specialty incubators dedicated toward a particular function in the area of the country where they're needed.
I would be very curious to hear about some of the business practices that differ from country to country that you've worked in due to the cultural values. You've said that entrepreneurs sort of have the same attributes across the board, but I'm guessing that business practices aren't necessarily.
Oh, you guessed right there. It's extremely different, particularly when you're building an incubator, a lot of times because of the source of the funds. In many countries, the government provides the source of the funds for the incubator, and therefore the government will dictate how the incubator can be built, what it can be built for, how those funds can be used. In other countries, particularly in the United States, the funds may come from an independent agency or from local government or from a private company, and therefore the incubator is free to do as they wish and as they see fit and to build it the way they want. So international, it tends to be more government supported and more government directed, and therefore you have to be very careful when you design the facility actually, and certainly how you spend the money, because there's a great deal of accountability there toward the government.
Okay, so how much freedom the incubator has in terms of its own design is certainly one of those cultural differences you see based on who's controlling the funding.
Absolutely.
Any other cultural / business culture differences that we should know about?
I think that there's a lot more accountability also, and there's not as much freedom of operation for the individual entrepreneur. For instance, when I went to China last year, the incubator managers were very concerned about maturing businesses more rapidly than we are here. Most incubators in the United States have a rather easygoing policy. For instance, if you came in the incubator with a company, you could take your time in maturing. If it took you 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that's okay. We would work with you. In China, it was 3 years and you're out, and you need to mature and get on the stick. And so the managers were concerned about how can we help these companies mature fast, because we've been given an edict by the government that we need to grow these companies in 3 years because that's all the time we have.
Well, what is a benchmark that would say I have matured enough to stay?
Typically number of employees and revenue. Bringing in revenue and getting a product out on the market and starting to make some money, as opposed to still having a product in development or R&D.
Why do you think that speed of maturity was so much more important in China than it is here in the U.S.?
I think it's an aggressive approach to trying to get companies out on the market and trying to get the economy jump-started and kick-started faster, to see new products out on the market faster, and to encourage people, hurry up and get going, and also perhaps to eliminate some people who might be lackadaisical and sitting around saying, we've got plenty of time, let's not worry about it.
No, you don't, huh?
Separate the winners from the losers rather rapidly.
Well, you've spent some time in China. You mentioned Malaysia. What's next on your docket?
Next, I've been to the UK, Canada, some other places, and a lot of time in Russia. I'm working on a huge project there. I've been several times. Last winter I was in Moscow and it was 47 below. This year I get to go to Barbados this winter, which is
nice.
much better. So I'll be going on a Kelley School project with Dr. Bruce Jaffe and the CIBER group to Barbados in the Caribbean to set up an incubator down there. We'll be working with a lot of retail businesses, some businesses targeted toward tourism, and hopefully some other areas in the Caribbean as well. There's a lot of potential down there. There's a lot of people unemployed, so we hope to set up not only an incubator there in Barbados, but in some other areas in the Caribbean as well, because there's a tremendous amount of potential down there for tourism, retail, and other businesses targeted toward that industry.
How are you preparing yourself, other than getting your skin conditioned for the sun, for this trip to Barbados?
I'm doing a lot of research on the local tourism industry, what other industries are down there, what natural resources they have as well, what the business climate is like down there currently, what businesses currently exist down there, and also what education is down there currently. They have some schools of business in the area. The Cave Hill School of Business is in Barbados, and what educational opportunities that the Kelley School can bring down there as well to assist them in entrepreneurial education, which plays a big part in the foundation of starting small companies.
I would think.
And lots of sunscreen.
And lots of sunscreen. What an exciting project for you. That's great. Let's wrap today with any last words of wisdom that you have for entrepreneurs, business owners that are contemplating a global move.
I think it's very important when you consider going international. A lot of businesses, when they start off, typically only consider the U.S. market, and then all of a sudden it becomes apparent to them there is a larger market. It's very important to spend the money and bring in an expert, whether it be a legal expert, a consulting expert, an import-export expert that's already been, or even perhaps someone who's already gone international, and somebody's already been through the pitfalls and the problems and the issues of taking a product or even a business and setting up another office in another country. There are a lot of issues, particularly language issues, in taking your company to another country. And I would remind everyone in that situation that you only get one chance to make a good impression. And it's terrible when that one chance is taken up making a bad impression with the wrong language error or the wrong product error. So spend the money, take the time, get an expert, and ask their opinion first.
Great advice. I hope that you take all of this great advice if you move globally. Thank you for joining us.